This is Deep Night Whispers. Tonight, we open a file that was never meant to be found. In the Appalachian hills, where the fog never quite clears and the dirt roads turn to memory, there is a place known only by a name locals refuse to say: After Dark Pine Hollow. A pocket of time sealed off from the rest of Kentucky, where the forest swallows houses whole, and even sound seems to move slower, as if afraid to disturb the silence. For nearly 40 years, one house stood there, half buried under vines and thyme, a wooden structure leaning on itself like an old thought. No mail, no phone lines, no visitors. The kind of place that disappears from maps, not because someone erased it, but because it chose to vanish. People in the nearby town of Harlan used to whisper that a family still lived there, the Masons, or maybe the Fields. No one agreed. They were said to be the last of something, though no one could quite define what. Some claimed they were hermits. Others said they were cursed. A few, mostly the old, insisted they had been born from the same blood too many times over. No one dared check. Not until the spring of 1998, when a deputy named Warren Doolin hiked up the ridge to follow the trail of a missing boy. The boy wasn't from there, just a wanderer, last seen heading into the woods with a fishing pole and a pack of crackers. He never came back. Warren's radio failed halfway up the mountain. His flashlight began to fade, but the daylight lingered long enough for him to find the house. It stood there, silent, surrounded by car parts and broken furniture, a patchwork of wood and tin roofs. He called out. No answer. He pushed the door open. The air inside was dense, heavy with mildew and something older, the scent of rot mixed with candle wax. On the far wall, he saw a collection of framed photographs, faces that all looked strangely similar, pale eyes, flat expressions, half smiles that didn't reach the eyes. The faces repeated, generation after generation, like copies of a copy. And then there was the notebook. It lay on the table, its cover worn, its pages filled with cramped handwriting, though not in any language he recognized. The words were reversed, mirrored left to right. When held up to the light, they revealed a pattern, a language written backwards, looping into itself. The entries stretched across decades. The last one read simply, "We keep what is ours. The blood remembers." Warren turned and saw a door at the end of the hall, a cellar hatch, sealed with chains. From below came the faint sound of movement. He left that night, and he never went back. The official report said nothing of what he saw, but within a month, the house burned to its foundation. No one claimed to have set the fire. Years later, in 2017, a film crew searching for forgotten communities in Appalachia came across the remnants of Pine Hollow. What they found in the ash would become one of the strangest discoveries in American folklore, a journal that spoke in mirrors, and the story of a family who tried to write their way out of extinction. By the time the ashes of Pine Hollow cooled, the town had already chosen to forget. It was easier that way. In places like that, forgetting isn't denial. It's survival. But the journal that survived the fire refused to be forgotten. It was recovered by the film crew's historian, Mara Callan, who noticed that the burned edges of its pages had preserved the ink perfectly in the middle, as if the fire itself had spared it on purpose. She took it to Lexington for analysis, hoping it would reveal a date, maybe even a name. It revealed something else entirely. The handwriting was meticulous, though uneven, as if written by different generations imitating one another. Some lines slanted, others were rounded, but all carried the same mirrored formation, as though the family had taught themselves to write backward for reasons lost to time. A local linguist examined it and discovered the truth. It wasn't just reversed, it was reflexive. Each entry mirrored the previous one, word by word, thought by thought, a literal inversion of meaning. It was as if the writer believed the act of reflection itself held spiritual power. The first translated page read, "We see the world as it sees us. To write straight is to invite eyes that don't belong." It became clear the family didn't just write backward, they lived that way too. According to fragments found near the ruins, the Pine Hollow family had withdrawn from society in 1932, after a series of public scandals involving their patriarch, Ezekiel Mason. He had been a preacher in a nearby mining town, known for his fiery sermons about purity and divine lineage. But after the mines closed and hunger took hold, his congregation dissolved, and Ezekiel took his followers, mostly relatives, into the mountains to preserve what God had made whole. They brought livestock, tools, and a doctrine that blurred scripture with delirium. He called it the doctrine of reflection. The core belief was simple, but horrific, that God's creation was perfect only when unbroken by the outside world. To marry beyond their bloodline was to invite contamination. To read outside Scripture was to invite corruption. And to write forward, to express thought in the way others did, was to open the door to sin itself. So they turned inward, literally. Every prayer, every name, every journal entry was written in reverse. Mirrors were treated as sacred. They believed the mirror showed the world as it was meant to be, and the unmirrored version, the corrupted imitation made by outsiders. By the time Ezekiel's children had children of their own, this language of reversal had become their only written form. They could no longer read conventional text, only their mirrored script. Their reality was a reflection of itself. Isolation warped them. The children grew with pale skin and luminous eyes from years of darkness and candlelight. Their speech softened, devolving into murmurs and glottal sounds, a private tongue, half-formed and half-remembered. When travelers occasionally wandered too close to Pine Hollow, they were met not with violence but with stillness. Figures would appear in the distance, watching, unmoving, almost curious, and then they would vanish back into the trees. No one knew what they wanted. No one asked. For nearly half a century, Pine Hollow existed that way, cut off from time, bound by their mirrored words and their blood. The last census that recorded their family name was in 1948. After that, they simply ceased to exist on paper. But the journal carried on, passed from hand to hand, generation after generation, always rewritten in the same inverted script, as if the act of transcribing it kept them alive. The final coherent entry, before the handwriting disintegrated into near gibberish, read, "The blood weakens when the world remembers us. So we keep to the mirror, where no one looks twice." Mara Callan believed the journal was not merely a record, it was a containment. Each entry was a ritual, a way of sealing their existence within mirrored language, safe from interference. But then came the final pages, and whatever safety they believed in had failed. When the film crew returned to Pine Hollow a second time, they weren't looking for ghosts. They were looking for proof. The air in that valley doesn't move the way it should. It's thick, like something once alive is still breathing through the soil. The forest presses close on all sides, and the silence carries a weight that makes even birds refuse to sing. The crew, 5 in total, set up camp near the ruins of the old house. Only the stone foundation and a twisted chimney remained. The walls had collapsed inward decades ago, consumed by ivy and time. The journal's discovery had drawn them there, but they didn't expect to find anything else. Then, on the second night, they heard it. A low rhythm, faint but distinct. 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 more. Like someone tapping from underground. At first, they thought it was an animal beneath the debris. But when they returned the next morning, one of the crew members, Eli Torres, noticed a pattern in the soot. On a section of the charred cellar floor, dust had been disturbed, not by wind or rain, but by movement, human movement. He cleared the space and found a wooden hatch hidden beneath a layer of ash. The hinges were rusted solid, but the outline was unmistakable. A door. When they pried it open, a smell like rotted paper and earth spilled out. Below, the cellar was still intact, though barely. The air shimmered with humidity and decay. The walls were lined with shelves, books, jars, bundles of old candles melted into stalactites. And in the center, a table. On it, another notebook. This one was newer. The paper was thin, pale, untouched by fire. And just like the earlier journal, the words ran backward. Mara's assistant photographed every page. Later, when they reversed the images, the first translated line read, "The house above us burned, but we remain below. The mirror kept us safe." The handwriting was uneven, trembling, frantic. It spoke of fear and confinement, of generations living underground long after the surface world had forgotten them. The writer mentioned the children born with no names and the watchers who no longer sleep. In one entry, dated 1974, the handwriting changed again. It became smoother, more deliberate, a different author. "We send the young ones to gather what we need when night is heavy. The world above is too bright. We keep the old ways. We write in reflection, so the eyes cannot find us." The crew couldn't comprehend what they were reading. It sounded like madness or survival. And yet, the descriptions matched what a few locals had whispered for years, that lights were sometimes seen moving through the trees at night, slow and deliberate, like lanterns carried by people who had forgotten how to hurry. As dusk fell that evening, Mara walked to the ridge overlooking the valley. The others were packing up their gear, preparing to leave before the light disappeared. But she stayed. She said later that she felt something watching her, not with hostility, but with a kind of patient recognition. She turned her camera toward the forest, zooming in on the black line where the trees met the horizon. Through the viewfinder, she saw movement, not one shape, but several, small figures, pale against the darkness. They weren't hiding. They were standing still, facing her, almost perfectly aligned. When she lowered the camera, they were gone. That night, one of the audio recorders left by the ruins captured a sound no one could explain. It began faintly, like wind passing through wood, and then formed syllables, low and mirrored, the same words repeated backward and forward at once. When the recording was played in reverse, it formed a sentence. "The blood remembers. The blood watches." The next morning, the crew left Pine Hollow. Mara took the second journal with her. She told the others she would archive it properly, send it to a university for preservation. But she never did. She kept it locked in her study for months, returning to it late at night. Friends said she became obsessed, reading the mirrored entries aloud in front of a mirror, as if trying to understand what the words meant when spoken back to themselves. Her final notes, recovered from her apartment after she vanished in 2018, contained only one line, written repeatedly in mirrored script. I saw them in the glass. To this day, no trace of her has ever been found. Only the camera, still recording, pointed toward her desk. In the reflection of the window behind it, a faint figure can be seen standing in the corner, watching. There are stories that live longer than the people who tell them. The tale of Pine Hollow became one of those stories. Quiet, heavy, and impossible to kill. After Mara Callan's disappearance, the footage she left behind was catalogued by her production company, but never released. Too strange, they said, too incomplete. Some of the audio had corrupted, looping into itself until the words were unrecognizable. Others played perfectly, but made listeners nauseous, disoriented, sometimes even violently sick. Researchers described it as auditory mirroring, the same phenomenon found in the journals, sound waves reversed and overlapped, creating tones that the human ear couldn't separate from silence. But others called it something simpler. They said it was an echo, the sound of a family still writing. Years passed, and Pine Hollow slipped once more into legend. The house was gone. The journals locked away, the hill itself overgrown, its coordinates quietly deleted from online maps after a series of hikers reported seeing themselves in places where no reflection should exist. One hiker described it best in his report. I saw a man in the trees wearing my face, but older. When I turned, he turned too, only faster. After that, the area was fenced off by the state, declared unstable from mine subsidence. No one goes there now, at least not officially. But on certain nights, when fog slides down from the ridges, locals say you can still see candlelight flickering deep between the trees, small, deliberate, and rhythmic. 3 lights, a pause, 2 more. The same pattern Warren Doolin heard all those years ago. Folklorists now call it the mirror code. No one agrees what it means. Some say it's a warning. Others say it's a call to those who share the same blood, and a few whisper that if you ever hear it close by, you must never answer. Not with words, not with movement, because what's looking for you isn't outside the mirror, but behind it. The journals of Pine Hollow remain sealed in a university archive, stored in temperature-controlled vaults, unread and unstudied. The mirrored handwriting hasn't faded. Each page still gleams faintly under certain light, as though the ink was never meant to dry. One curator swears that when she checked the display case after hours, she found a new entry that hadn't been there before. Just a single sentence, freshly written in the same reversed scrawl. We remember the ones who speak our names. The security footage from that night showed no one entering the room. The lights never flickered, and yet, in the reflection of the glass, something moved. If you drive through eastern Kentucky today, you might still find the road that leads into the hollow, though the signs have all been torn down. The trees close around you, tall and old, their branches folding overhead like a cathedral of roots and rot. You'll feel it long before you see it, that strange, familiar pressure in your chest, like something is leaning in to listen. That's when you turn around. You don't stop to take pictures. You don't look for the reflection. You just leave. Because some stories were never meant to be seen, and some families were never meant to be remembered. This is deep night whispers. The night remembers what the living forget. And in the mirrors of Pine Hollow, they're still waiting.